Okay, hi everyone. So today we're going to have a look at how to analyse perceptively, which is something that I get asked about quite a lot. So obviously at the top end of the mark scheme, we're looking at perceptive analysis, above thoughtful and above clear. We want to try and be perceptive. So we're just going to try and dig down and work out what exactly that means. It almost seems quite kind of convoluted, quite complicated if I say, okay, you need to come up with a perceptive point if you don't actually understand what the word perceptive means. So just get your pen and paper ready. If you can just write on the title of how to perceptively analyse, and then if you just get a mind map, written down, put perceptive in the middle, and then you can just think of all the words that you associate with that there, that'd be great. Okay, so hopefully then you've surrounded it with words that you associate with perceptive. I'll give you some of the words that I associate with it. I associate things like clever, enlightening, unique ideas, insightful, and intuitive. If you don't understand what all those words mean, that's fine. We can always pause the video and go find out the definitions if you want. But really, we're thinking about trying to come up with something that's a little bit different, a little more unusual, but that's really hard to do without having kind of like set things, kind of set ways to go about it. So in this video, I'm going to give you some set ways to go about being perceptive. It's not just people that kind of naturally come up with these ideas. There are some students that will naturally be more perceptive, but it doesn't mean that you can't learn to be perceptive in English, and that's what this video is going to be all about. Okay, so the actual definition from Google is having or showing sensitive insight. So again, it's not very helpful to those of you that you maybe struggle with being perceptive if you don't, if it doesn't come naturally to you, something that you have to kind of learn to do. Level 4, then, as it says here, you need to be able to analyse in detail and perceptively. So kind of looking like maybe at it from a different angle, for example. Okay, so it's really important that you understand the mark scheme in order to succeed. That's like your success kind of roadmap, if that makes sense. So level 1 then is this kind of simple analysis, very straightforward. The student isn't attempting to understand why the writer's done something. There's no inferences there. It's just kind of very straightforward and simple. Some understanding where the student has tried, but it's not very clear. They might have fully answered the question, or they might have strayed away on a tangent. So that's some. Okay. Then we get to clear. It's developed. I understand that you've answered the question. The ideas aren't necessarily exciting or unique, but they haven't made inferences relevant to the question. And then perceptive at the top is where the student gives this detailed response to the question, which is clear and clever. And there's clear inferences made that are relevant to the question. They might come up with ideas that other people's haven't as well. Okay, now this is taken from the language mark scheme. However, the literature mark scheme also makes reference to being perceptive and insightful, and just below that would be thoughtful as well. So this applies to language and literature. So we're just going to have a think then, because I always think, I can explain something, but actually it's so much more useful to see what other students have said. So these come from real students. They were trying to work out what is the difference between being clear and being perceptive. So if you want to make a couple of notes from what they've said, feel free to. So student A has said that being clear means you make your argument easy to understand, which is good. Being perceptive and judicious means that you make points that aren't common or out of the box. And then you can articulate that well in your writing by linking it together precisely instead of just going off on a tangent or listing your points. Basically, you need to make interesting points and write like you know what you're talking about. And I like that. The idea of writing with confidence is something that you see in students that do a lot of practice papers. That you can write with confidence once you've had that practice. Student B, a bit shorter. I guess clear is being accurate and coming up with easy to understand points, whereas perceptive would entail more detailed points that other people wouldn't think of. So making your point unique. Okay. Now it's not. I mean, at the end of the day, you're competing against all these other thousands of students who are sitting the exam at the same time as you. There really probably isn't such a thing as being unique, because someone else probably think of it. But it's about trying to find quotes and ideas that that less students would look at. So don't think you have to be the only one in the country to think about it. But as someone that marks mock papers, I know that 9 out of 10 students will pick the same quotes. It's about trying to think of different quotes, trying to be a bit more unique, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Students see it's quite a long, lengthy one, this one is, but there's like lots of really good stuff in here. I think being perceptive is not only about noticing small bits of detail, but giving you an insight into why that detail has been included. It's more about why that has been written and why it has been written in that way. I was looking at a Hunger Games extract yesterday with a pupil, and we were talking about how at the start of the extract in Hunger Games, it starts with a short sentence of 60 seconds. We then have a long diversion from Suzanne Collins where she goes off because Katniss is waiting to run out to the cornucopia. So she gives us 60 seconds approximately of reading before the action continues. Okay, why has she done that? It's because she's picked those words on purpose, because she wants to give us time to pause and to go with Katniss on this mental internal thought kind of journey that she's going through. So she's picked 60 seconds and then she's strayed off on a tangent on purpose. The writers always do things on purpose. And so this student is saying that the perceptive student understands why, okay, that they're able to unlock why the writer's doing certain things. And the great thing with English is that it's all your response to the text. There isn't really a wrong answer. So you can come up with different reasons. And, if you're coming up with some clever ideas, even if the examiner doesn't agree with you, you are still likely to get higher marks. Okay, the main focus of the English exams is analysing what the author is saying and what they are trying to get across without explicitly saying it. And perceptiveness comes into this. You have to try and be perceptive in your analysis of language and perhaps give more than one idea of what the author is trying to say, or give a more insightful idea. That's a really interesting point that I'm going to pick back up on later in the video, about there being kind of multiple different interpretations. English is all about the analysis, and the more detailed the analysis, the better. Being perceptive can help build better analysis that is more interesting for the marker to read. Okay, so I thought that was really, I thought that was quite a nice kind of students kind of like summary there of what perceptive is. I feel like that student could be a teacher. Seems to have a very good in-depth understanding of it. This is an extract taken from a real exam paper for language paper 1. And this is only half the extract. I just wanted to pick this out because I wanted to pick out a couple of things that people sometimes do that don't permit them to get into that perceptive band. So here, for example, there's a character called Hartop. He's described, you've seen the second paragraph, as being thin, angular, and then he's described as occupying almost all the seat. Now, some students just went on and on about him being thin. Okay, now that's just kind of like rewriting out what it says in the text. Okay, you might get to the clear band there, but you're not going to get to the perceptive band. Some students said he was really fat because he's occupying almost all the seat. Okay, the perceptive student reads the whole text and makes sure that they put their ideas into context. He can't be super fat because it says he's thin, angular, and star-faced. Okay, so that's a couple of things you might want to have a think about when you're trying to be perceptive, is making sure you're avoiding some of the obvious things, but also not saying anything that doesn't make sense. And there's quite a lot in this extract to have a look at, but I'm actually going to focus on a different one because I want to have a look at one that isn't in an exam already, because there'll be videos on this elsewhere on YouTube. Okay, so before we move on, we're going to have a look at an extract from a book called Shiver by Maggie Seafater, and it's all about werewolves. But before we do that, should we have a think? What do you think this is? Just write down what you think it is, and why might I have chosen to look at this in relation to perceptive analysis? Okay, just write it down. Okay then, so they are scales, and I've chosen them especially in relation to this idea. This is Lady Justice. Scales are often used in courtrooms, okay, and it's the idea of weighing of evidence. Lady Justice has been used as a figure in the courtroom for hundreds of years. I think in the 16th century she started being depicted with the blindfold, as you can see here. That idea that in the court they weigh up the evidence blindfolded, they're not biased. And it's just literally about focusing on that evidence and weighing it up in order to make that decision, and that's what we do in our when we're looking at perceptive analysis. We weigh up different ideas and we give merit to both the ideas. Okay, and that's something that we're going to have a look at when you see my perceptive response to Shiver. Before we do that, this is the really important things that I definitely need you to write down. Because for me, being perceptive is, number one, weighing up the options and providing a counter argument or alternative ideas. It's knowing that in English there is no right answer, that we should always consider multiple options. Always look for that however. Okay, it's not that there's this one set kind of opinion. You know, in the heart of extract, for example, they talk about them all being squished up together. Now, one student might say they're all squished up together because Hardtop is really, really selfish and he takes up loads of room. But, you know, there's always that however there. However, it might just be that he's extremely tall, he's kind of maybe very awkward, he doesn't mean to take up that room. You know, there's always that however. There's always two sides to every argument. Okay. Number two, think deeply about the connotations of words and why those words specifically were chosen. Okay, I sometimes say you can also think about, you know, what word they could have chosen instead. You know, why did they say that the rain was sprinting down the window? They could have said that the rain ran down the window. Okay, you can talk about words that aren't there and say, you know, well, they picked this word on purpose. It's, you know, the perceptive student will really deeply think about it. Number three, coming up with clever interpretations and ideas that other students might not think of. Again, that could be quite, you know, that's kind of the biggest, most difficult thing to do. But in order to do that, you're doing these things if you're looking for the however, looking at individual words, looking at what isn't there, and that will help you come up with those clever interpretations and ideas. Number four, applying real world ideas to the text. That could be as simple as if it's a poem about a school and there's railings around the school, you know, talking about how there's that prison-like atmosphere, because I know, you know, in the real world, prisons have railings around them. It can be as simple as that, really. Just things that you know from the real world, from conversations you've had with people, to films you've watched, to books you've read, you know, real world ideas that you can apply to the text. And number five, pick the best quotes, potentially unusual ones. You should pair these with other quotes in the extract, which is something I'm going to look at. The perceptive student often won't just do as you're doing like a petal paragraph, for example, you know, here's my point, here's one quote, here's my technique, here's my analysis, here's my link. The perceptive student generally will use their own sentence style, and it will just become, you know, writing very naturally, dropping in mini quotes, connecting, you know, patterns in the text. For me, one of the easiest ways to be perceptive is to find linking kind of quotes, is what I would call it. So trying to find patterns in the text. This quote links to this quote, which tells me this. You know, without both of these quotes, I wouldn't know that. And that leads me on to what I'm going to talk about when it comes to the extract. Okay. If you just want to have a look here, again, this is just from the mark scheme if you want to write any of that down. But again, it's all about looking at the effects of the writer's choices. That's what English is about. We're just trying to unlock why the writer's chosen to do that and what the impact is on the reader. If you want more understanding of analysis, have a look at my How to Analyse Clearly video, because they go into a lot more detail about that. Okay, so if you could just have a look through this, I can also put a Dropbox link in that has the Shiver extract into the description for the video. Very, very short. She's a beautiful writer, Maggie Steve-Fater is. Definitely recommend having a look at her. So if you just press pause, read through, and then we'll carry on. Okay, then, so hopefully now you've had the opportunity to read through it. What we're going to do then is we're going to have a quick look at the question. So here's the question: how does the writer use language here to reveal the narrator's feelings? Okay, so we're looking at the narrator's feelings, 12 mark kind of question. And what I've done is I've gone and written a couple of paragraphs for you to have a look. So, and just notice the video is covering a little bit of the answer. But basically, I've tried to do the rules that I've talked about by looking at some of the unusual quotes, by trying to provide a however, trying to come up with some clever ideas, and also trying to find maybe some more unusual techniques to have a look at, you know, trying to think about it in a slightly different way. Now, I know it's 12 marks, so a lot of teachers will say straight away, right, that, you know, three paragraphs, okay? I would rather you do two developed paragraphs, but again, yeah, it's up to you. And I've tried to drop in, you know, patterns and individual one-word quotes, and, you know, talk about language techniques so that, you know, they have a purpose. We're not just saying this is a simile, this is an oxymoron, this is an adjective, okay? The example would have literally said they don't want to see that. You've got to pick them for a reason. I've picked an oxymoron here because there's a specific reason, you know, for me to have a look at it. Okay, so immediately at the beginning of the extract, the writer uses language to potentially indicate that the narrator feels conflicted about their surroundings through the use of contrast. Okay, I have picked this because I know most students are going to say that she feels very comfortable or she feels scared in her surroundings. So I'm like, right, what can I do that's different? The perceptive student thinks, what is different? What will most students not look at? Okay, That is my top tip for being perceptive. Think about what most students won't do. Okay. The oxymoron dying gorgeously is cleverly used to describe the dying leaves. However, when combined with the vibrant, ugly soundtracks, the reader begins to sense there is a pattern in the opening of the text. Okay, it's a little bit explicit here that I'm saying there is a pattern. That's okay to do though. The contrast of vibrant and ugly here reminds us of dying gorgeously. The cumulative effect of these two phrases leading us to believe that the narrator may feel conflicted. It's potentially feeling both excited. I meant to say they're potentially feeling both excited and apprehensive about walking far into these woods. Okay, now I could have gone into a bit more detail there and talked about how, you know, how much they contrast and, you know, what exactly dying means, what exactly gorgeously means. But I was trying to do it, you know, in that time condition in 12 minutes. So I was trying to do it as quickly as possible. Okay, then, however, the further we read on this extract, it becomes clear that the reader's apparent apprehension eases away, with the confidence growing as she moves into the woods. Okay, so I've started off by saying, yes, she's conflicted, but I'm not going to say that the whole extract she feels conflicted. I'm now going to talk about the change in how she feels. Okay, so again, just trying to be a bit more perceptive here, trying to think about that the extract is not as individual quotes, is that there's, you know, these connected ideas, and there's a progression of ideas as well. You know, this is a story this is taken from. Okay, despite describing this area of the woods as unfamiliar territory, the writer reveals that the narrator feels confident, assured. Okay, already used 2 quotes, okay, but I'm using it in a way that it's called embedded quotes. It's just, you know, written into the sentence, though it's natural to do, okay. The use of 2 adjectives here as opposed to 1 describes their feelings and helps reassure the reader that the narrator feels more comfortable as opposed to apprehensive, okay, because I'm saying, you know, we've got 2 adjectives here, confident and assured. This is then further refuted by, you know, backed up by a 1-sentence paragraph that reads, "I felt like I was home." Okay, now I know I'm going to talk about the word home because, as I said earlier, being perceptive is about zooming in on individual words. The word home connotes warmth. So denotes means like, you know, home would be, if I talk about what the word home denotes, it'd be like a place that we stay, you know, it's a roof over our heads, you know, what it is. Whereas connotes is like the feelings, thoughts, you know, ideas associated with the word, is the connotations. It connotes warmth and the image in the reader's mind of a safe sanctuary, which is surprising as the narrator has revealed that wolves tread the warm paths in these woods. Okay, so you can see here again, I'm embedding those quotes because I understand that in an extract, words do not exist in isolation. Words are part of a web of words in an extract. So I'm going to keep referring to these kind of individual words and talking about other parts of the extract. Okay, be perceptive. The writer clearly wants to show how calm and at ease the narrator now feels using this 1-sentence paragraph. However, the extract ends ominously with the narrator finding 3 wolves. Now I'm going to try and be perceptive here again because I want to give, I mean, you only actually have to be perceptive once in an answer to get to the perceptive band and be clear in the rest of it. Well, I'm going to try now to show again that there's an alternative interpretation. Okay, because I really want to get those perceptive marks. Okay, I want to get, you know, between 10 to 12 marks for this question. We never discover her feelings as it is left on a cliffhanger, leaving us wanting to discover how she reacts as she has been walking on the path that the wolves used early in the extract. It's clear that the narrator may feel confident, but we never find out her true feelings in meeting the wolves, leaving it to our imagination. Okay, it's totally fine to say. The question is about how does the narrator feel? Because it ends on a cliffhanger, I don't know how the narrator feels. That is okay to say, because I have said at the beginning she feels conflicted. Then I said, actually, I think she grows to feel confident. And then I said, but you know what? At the end, I'm not sure. Okay, that's fine to say. That's acknowledging that there's different ideas. I'm not just said she's confident throughout the whole thing. Okay, it's about having that sensitive insight, which is what we talked about right at the beginning of this video. Okay, so if I were you, I'd go now and have a go at answering this question. Or why not go back and have a look at the Hartop extract and try and have a look at a question such as how is the Hartop family described in this extract? Okay, it's all about practicing with extracts and, you know, seeing it almost kind of as a crime scene, as I said in my How to Analyse Clearly video. This is full of evidence for you to have a look at. It's just up to you to unpick which evidence you want to have a look for. Okay, hopefully that was helpful, and good luck with your perceptive analysis.